Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and tonight we have the latest Steelers coaching search rumors for you guys. We've got a lot to talk about on today's show, so I won't waste any more of your time. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because the search continues on here in Pittsburgh for the next head coach of the Black and Gold. We're going to be getting you guys daily and free updates, everything that you guys need to know about the head coaching search. We're going to have it every single day on this channel, so if you don't want to miss a thing, make sure you guys click that subscribe button. All right, so now apparently there is some momentum gaining for Mike McCarthy as a potential head coach candidate here in Pittsburgh, as Mark Kaboly claims that McCarthy is now the favorite to be Pittsburgh's next head coach. Now, the first thing that I want to say about this report, or this whatever you want to call it from Kaboly, is that not necessarily everything that he says is gospel. All right, this is not necessarily breaking news or anything like that. But this could still go in a lot of different ways, and it certainly wouldn't be the first time that somebody on Pittsburgh radio speculated on something like this and got something wrong. But I do think that Mike McCarthy is somebody that the Steelers could be taking a serious look at here, and the reason why that is because I think that the players in particular really want Aaron Rodgers to return for another season, and if you want to give Aaron Rodgers the best possible pitch to come back for one more season here in Pittsburgh, he has said that he would love to play for Mike McCarthy again. And if you hire him as your next head coach, not only do you bring in a very stable head coach that has had double-digit win seasons for a majority of the years he's been a head coach in the National Football League, would instantly climb to number 3 on the list of current head coach playoff wins with 11. He has a Super Bowl under his belt, but with Rodgers potentially coming back in 2026, and then McCarthy's history developing young quarterbacks, including Aaron Rodgers, by the way, if the focus is on the quarterback position, I can see why the Pittsburgh Steelers would be considering Mike McCarthy for this role, as much as maybe McCarthy wouldn't be my preference or my top choice for this job. Now, I think a big question that we should be asking ourselves right now is, should the Pittsburgh Steelers even want for Aaron Rodgers to return to this team as this team's starting quarterback in 2026? Because I think there's good arguments to be made on both ends of the spectrum here. In terms of the cons and in terms of the reasons why you wouldn't want him to come back, is he honestly didn't have that great of a season here in Pittsburgh last season. I mean, he was 35th in success rate, which means there were backup quarterbacks with a higher success rate last year than Aaron Rodgers, and he had some good things about his game as well. He was 7th in turnover-worthy play percentage. I thought, given the lack of wide receiver talent, at times he definitely elevated the offense. I think he did a good job being a distributor, but I don't think, he's like a top 15 level quarterback anymore. And if the plan is to run it back and try to win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, I think, there's certain things that you can say there about, maybe Rodgers being a limited quarterback at this point in his NFL journey, and next year he's going to be even older at 43 years old. But I also think there's a case for Aaron Rodgers to come back and for the Steelers to want him to come back for one more season. First kind of point here on the case for Rodgers is that it would be the second year here in Pittsburgh with his guys, essentially running his offense. If you bring in Mike McCarthy, it's technically a different offensive play caller, but make no mistake, this is going to be pretty much the same exact offense. And, you're going to have DK Metcalf back again next year. Pat Freiermuth would probably want to come back next year and not ask for a trade if Rodgers is coming back. Darnell Washington will be back next year. If Rodgers is coming back, I can almost guarantee you the team will bring back Kenny Gainwell. You still have Jaylen Warren, and then you add a couple decent pieces to the receiver room, and all of a sudden you got a pretty decent group of weapons here for Aaron Rodgers to play point guard and distribute the football out to all of those weapons in this kind of shotgun spread style of offense that Mike McCarthy would be bringing to the table. Also, the familiarity with the scheme. I mean, all the language that McCarthy would be bringing in, I'm guessing would be very similar, if not the exact same as what Rodgers is used to when he used to be coached under Mike McCarthy there in Green Bay. And, he mixed that with the second-year continuity with the guys that currently exist here. There's a reason to believe that Rodgers might even play better in year 2 here in Pittsburgh than he did in year 1. Also, I think if the goal is to develop a young quarterback, I'm a big believer in sitting young quarterbacks for as long as you can to help them develop, not have that pressure on them to come in and immediately perform, because it really is a big jump from the college game to the pro game, guys. So whether it's Will Howard, whether it's a rookie rookie or whatever, Aaron Rodgers would be an awesome mentor for that young quarterback once again in 2026. And if Pittsburgh drafts a quarterback, what better mentor for that young quarterback than Aaron Rodgers, is one of the most intelligent quarterbacks in the National Football League. I mean, guys like Will Howard and Jordan Love and Zach Wilson, the guys that he's mentored in the past, they have been, very glowing about Aaron Rodgers' mentorship and how good he is to them, and, how much they've learned from him. And, if you want to go and get a quarterback in this year's class, I'd say probably the 5 most likely quarterback targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you want to go round 1, I think your answer is probably Ty Simpson out of Alabama. But if you want to go day 2, Trinidad Chambliss out of Ole Miss is a possibility. Drew Aller, Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, some other guys that were, kind of more highly touted heading into the college football season, but disappointed. Aller obviously coming off an injury, but all those guys were possible projected first-round picks at one point in time. You give those guys a year to learn under Aaron Rodgers with their physical skill sets that had them projected as first-round picks once upon a time ago, and you could be looking at something that could be pretty successful in Pittsburgh with the right investment at the quarterback position. And I also think Aaron Rodgers coming back for another season to mentor Will Howard would be good for Will Howard. I mean, I know a lot of Steelers fans want to just roll with Will Howard as the starting quarterback right now, but guys, he's never even played a snap in the preseason, man. And all the practice reps as the scout team quarterback aren't really with your offense during the year. It's with the scout team. And, I just don't think Howard's had a ton of time to sit and develop. And, I'm sure he learned a lot from Aaron Rodgers in year 1, but he is a 6th-round pick. I do think that, based on his film at Ohio State, he does have a ways to go before he's ready to start in the National Football League. And with no reps, at least no game reps under his belt in year 1, I think another year of mentorship under Aaron Rodgers would be a good thing for him. Also, the players in the Steelers locker room want him back. And if you want your players in your locker room to feel like, your organization is listening to them and respects their opinion, bring back the guy that they want to bring back. That's kind of, the way it goes is, if these players want Aaron Rodgers back, they think he's awesome. They think he's a great leader, great quarterback for this football team. They want him back for another year. Then, I think that they would appreciate if the team did whatever they could to bring Aaron Rodgers back for another season. It's been well reported at this point that, pretty much universally all the players in the Steelers locker room want Rodgers back next year. So, I could certainly see this organization doing whatever it takes to make that a reality this year, especially because the 2026 quarterback market in free agency and on the trade market, at least right now, absolutely sucks. And we talked about Rodgers and about how, his season in 2025 maybe wasn't stellar. I wouldn't consider him a top 15 QB in the NFL right now. But you look at the market and it's just not really good right now. First of all, Daniel Jones, one of the top free agents that are going to be hitting the market this spring, likely going back to Indianapolis. There's really no reason for him not to go back. He had his best season of his career in that offense last year. He's coming off an Achilles tear. I feel like Indy is where he's going to end up. Then Malik Willis is a popular one, and I've even thrown out the idea of going out and getting Malik Willis, but with Miami bringing in Packers people in both the front office at their GM spot and at head coach with Jeff Hafley, it just kind of seems like Malik Willis is going to end up in South Beach. Plus, if you're Malik Willis and you have a choice between living in Miami and Pittsburgh, which one are you going to be taking? You're probably going to be picking Miami as still a 27-year-old man that probably likes to have a good time. You know what I'm saying? But, then you get to San Francisco and, the 49ers and John Lynch, their GM, completely shut down any Mac Jones trade talk. They said that they're not going to consider trading him this offseason. I know he's another popular answer among some Steelers fans. So when you take those 3 guys out of the equation, there's not a whole lot of realistic quarterback options for the Steelers in terms of bringing in a veteran. Kyler Murray is probably your best bet. He's 28 years old. He's struggled the last couple of years. He's dealt with some injuries, and he's super undersized. Do you really want to spend a day 2 draft pick to get Kyler Murray? I guess it's an option, but I don't know, man. And Geno, I think Geno's a better option than some people might give him credit for, but he's coming off an awful season in Las Vegas. Certainly a risk to bring him in. Anthony Richardson, younger guy that you could, take a big swing at and try to hit a grand slam home run with him. But despite his physical talent, he has not, really shown the ability to be an NFL quarterback at this point. And then everybody else on screen, I really have no interest in whatsoever. Tua doesn't have a strong enough arm to play in the AFC North, neither does Kirk Cousins, and then everybody else else I'm just passing on. So I think Pittsburgh could do a lot worse this year than bringing back Aaron Rodgers for another season. He's got the continuity with the players in this group. It would almost certainly mean Kenny G is coming back, so that would be fantastic. I think that bringing Rodgers back for another year, and if Rodgers wants to come back, I think that there's worse strategies for the Pittsburgh Steelers to pursue. And if the only way Rodgers wants to come back is if Mike McCarthy is the head coach, I guess I would maybe rather move on and go with a younger guy. But at least I would understand the decision if the Steelers end up going with Mike McCarthy as their next head coach. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Grade a potential Mike McCarthy hiring here in Pittsburgh. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. I would give it a B-, C+. I wouldn't be over the moon about it, but I would understand the thinking behind it. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Ethos. While I tell you about our sponsor, give me a letter grade down there for a potential Mike McCarthy hiring. And now let's have a word from our sponsor today at Ethos. And guys, the summer before I started here at Chat Sports, I unfortunately lost my late grandfather. And as you tend to do when you lose someone close to you, you begin to think about your own mortality and what would happen to the people dependent on you if something were to happen. With today's sponsor, Ethos, your family can be protected. If something were to happen to me, guys, the last thing I want Cassie and the people I love to worry about is being able to pay the bills. So I trust Ethos to keep them protected. As you probably already know, however, the process for obtaining life insurance can be super confusing or straight up annoying with how tedious the process can be. That's where our friends at Ethos come in. As of March of 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There's no complicated process, and it's 100% online. There's no medical exam required, and you just answer a few health questions to get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos today. Get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That's ethos.com/NFL Daily to get your free quote today. Application times may vary, rates may vary, and a big thank you to Ethos for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. Now we got some a little bit of a hodgepodge of other head coaching news here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll start with Brian Flores, who had his in-person interview with the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday in the city of Pittsburgh. And Tom Pelissero reported just moments ago that the Vikings have signed defensive coordinator Brian Flores to a new contract. Sources tell me and Ian Rappaport Flores is still a candidate with the Steelers and Ravens head coaching jobs, but if he doesn't land one of those, he'll stay in Minnesota. Now, something to keep in mind here, guys, is that this doesn't necessarily mean Flores is out of the running. If the Steelers offer him the head coaching position in Pittsburgh, my guess is he will take it. But the fact that he is agreeing to finalize terms on this deal probably indicates that he doesn't anticipate getting the job. I don't know exactly what Flores is thinking right now, but it certainly seems like that's what we're talking about at this point, that Brian Flores, I would say his chances of becoming the next Steelers head coach went down with him agreeing to that new contract with the Minnesota Vikings. Also, the chances of him becoming the defensive coordinator, say if they hire Mike McCarthy, there's been some rumors that Flores could be the DC under a McCarthy regime. That is officially off the table. It's officially head coach or bust in terms of Brian Flores and the Pittsburgh Steelers for this coaching cycle. Some other things here to talk about. Josina Anderson put this out earlier today saying the Steelers are still internally reviewing other names on the market for their head coach vacancy before whittling their list down. A league source said early this morning, indicating that the Steelers could be taking a little bit more time, like a guy like Sean McDermott or Clint Kubiak could maybe get into the mix here. We'll just have to see where this thing goes over the next week or so. Then also Andrew Filipponi threw this out there. Didi Kinkambwala from CBS Sports went on Pittsburgh radio today, and she said that she has a source from a coach in the National Football League that claims Chris Shula is the quote-unquote leader in the clubhouse to be the next Steelers head coach. So if you're a Shula guy, that should be pretty encouraging for you. And honestly, man, if it's a choice between Chris Shula and Mike McCarthy, I am taking Chris Shula every single day of the week. I would be absolutely thrilled at this point to get Chris Shula as the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And right now, by the fact that we're getting all these rumors and all these reports that the Steelers are going to be taking their time, all this different stuff to make a decision, that tells me that they could be waiting for somebody coaching for the Los Angeles Rams right now, which could be Chris Shula, it could also be Nate Scheelhaase. I think that the Steelers are willing to wait to make sure they get their their guy. Whoever that ends up being, it could be McCarthy, it could be Anthony Weaver, who, by the way, is the only guy in this entire search that has a confirmed second interview at this stage in the game. I think people are kind of sleeping on Anthony Weaver as a candidate that I think, could potentially be a dark horse. But also Kaboli, also reported today, along with the McCarthy thing, that, you shouldn't be expecting the Steelers to make a decision, quote unquote, anytime soon. We've heard these reports pretty consistently throughout the process, guys, that the Steelers are going to go through the full extent of the process. They're in no rush to make a decision. They want to make sure that the guy that they hire is the right guy for them and the right guy for the job. And they're in no rush to make this decision before they absolutely have to. And, there's another interesting report from another Steelers insider today, Jared Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, who says that Nate Scheelhaase, the pass game coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams, had a quote-unquote impressive interview, and he even described it as a quote-unquote Mike Tomlin vibe. Okay, so obviously Mike Tomlin ended up landing the job, surprisingly, as a younger head coach candidate back in 2007. To say that this is a Mike Tomlin vibe in his interview would indicate that Scheelhaase has a real chance of being the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And listen, man, I've been, doing a lot of deep dives on all these coaches, and listening to this guy Scheelhaase talk about football is impressive. Okay, he kind of talks about the game in a similar way to Sean McVay. And obviously he's been learning under McVay the last 2 seasons in LA. He's called plays before at the college level at Iowa State. And, he's just a very impressive human being, at his age, which was around the same age Mike Tomlin was hired as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just can't say right now that it would shock me if, Scheelhaase, gets an in-person interview with Omar Khan and Art Rooney, and they're completely blown away by his presence in person. It would not shock me whatsoever if he ends up winning the hearts of the Steelers ownership and front office, and, he ends up earning this position kind of surprisingly, kind of similar to how Mike Tomlin won the position over Russ Graham and Ken Wisenhunt back in the day. And, I also think he would be a hell of an OC here in a potential Chris Shula regime. Obviously, Shula would be bringing the competency in terms of, being under the Sean McVay umbrella in LA for as long as he has, as well as his expertise on the defensive side of the ball. And then Scheelhaase is somebody that, might not be quite ready for the head coaching job, but, he's definitely ready for an offensive play calling position, in my opinion. I think that would be a hell of a staff. And who knows, maybe even get Raheem Morris to join his good friend Chris Shula here in Pittsburgh. I kind of doubt Morris would take this job. I think he'd probably take a different job, but that would be a hell of a trio right there if the Pittsburgh Steelers can pull it off. But now, before we get into some final kind of items here to finish up today's show, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are enjoying today's show, if you appreciate the in-depth content that we provide for you guys on the Steelers head coaching search every single day here on Steelers Talk, let us know by clicking that thumbs up icon, and it also helps out the YouTube algorithm. It gets our video out in front of more Steelers fans like yourselves. So I greatly appreciate your guys' support. Now, before I go here, some final items around the National Football League and around the Pittsburgh Steelers, and some things that I think you guys should know. Jason LaConfora, a reporter for the National Football League here, says that execs from multiple NFL front offices who are conducting head coaching searches believe the Ravens are moving close to a final decision and strongly anticipate Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter getting the job. The industry also expected Minter in Baltimore before Harbaugh was let go, for what it's worth. So essentially, Minter is expected to be in Baltimore. Kind of surprisingly, in my opinion, Minter did not get a second interview with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anthony Weaver is actually the only guy that's confirmed to get a second interview with the Steelers at this point in the process. But it certainly seems like Minter will be the new Ratbirds head coach. But then Mark Kaboli, once again, it's the Kaboli fest here. He says the Steelers assistant general manager Andy Weidel will interview for the open general manager position with the Atlanta Falcons, according to sources. Weidel has been with the Steelers since May of 2022 and is a very well-respected personnel evaluator around league circles. Weidel is a big part of putting the Steelers draft board together every single year, and the Steelers have drafted pretty darn well. I think Weidel is somebody that is probably a future GM in this league somewhere, but I would love to keep him as long as we can, man. I think he's such a value to this team as the assistant GM to Omar Khan. I think he's a big reason why the Steelers have been as successful as they've been in the NFL draft over the last several years. And according to a lot of people that are surrounding the situation, not a lot of people are expecting Weidl to get a job this year as a GM, but he is definitely viewed as somebody that down the road is probably going to get a GM job. But as far as I'm concerned, selfishly as a Steelers fan, I hope he stays here as long as he possibly can. But that's just me. All right, that'll be it for today's show, guys. Make sure you type those real ones. I know today was a little bit of a longer one. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. But if you made it to the end of the show, that makes you a real one. I want to know who the real ones are down there in the comment section. We'll give some love to you in the comments if you do so. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors presented by Chat Sports. I'll have more content for you guys tomorrow. Ponzi and I will be live tomorrow starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time to talk about the latest surrounding head coaching search, all that different stuff. We'll have a bunch of great content for you guys tomorrow. So if you don't want to miss any of it, make sure you guys click that subscribe button.